how emphatic and how deep it has to hit you, that from the moment you heard something, and by the time you have left that place where you heard it, and you gone back home, and you took a shower, and you had a drink, and you slept, and you woke up, and you went about your business, and you did this or that, how long did that stay with you? The acuity of that I'm talking about. Anything can hit you in a moment. Anything can hit us in a moment. And we feel like, oh, how long would that stay with you? That's the question. Effectively speaking, in terms of the essence of the teaching, there's nothing to teach. And this is self-evident on the account that all of us embody that what shines through, not just in equal measure, because that's also a limitation of the language. We are the embodiment of that what shines through. And even saying all of us is again a limitation of the language, because there's no such thing as all of us. That light is a singular. That light is what illumines everything. So this is where the alpha and omega of all the teachings, this is where the teaching begins. At least teachings that are pertinent to that platform of understanding. There are many spiritual teachings, of course. Some spiritual teachings deliberately and emphatically emphasize me here, and then there is greater reality. There is that what we can then have culturally chosen term for it. Almighty, Brahman, God, Yahweh, Allah, and the list goes on and on and on. There are many, many different terms that can be used for that reality, but that reality is not, or at least it's inappropriate, simply inappropriate to claim it. Yes, there are concessions and understandings that whatever that light, that embodiment of light is here an expression of, it still renders me somehow asunder. So even the dualistic teachings, and by large all religions are such, even the religions that are spoken of as monistic, they have very strong dualistic components, and we can talk about it, if you will, later on, either tonight or over the course of the weekend. But as far as the understanding of oneness of everything, there's nothing to understand. Nothing. You see? Why there is nothing to understand? Well, because in order to understand something, there needs to be also components involved. These components are knower, knowing, and known. The triumvirate, or the trinity, or the three-in-one, as they're spoken of. And this is why we've chosen this as an umbrella for our teachings, the philosophy known as Trika Shaivism. The word Trika, Sanskrit term, simply stands for that trinity. For the trinity of that, what is exemplified here in English terms, dressing it down now, down to the clinical understanding. Knower, knowing, known. This is where, if you will, the modality of how experience can take place is indispensable as far as that experience is concerned. So, you see, this paradox already enters in, because that very modality conceals that oneness there and then. It expresses itself, because without that, it cannot express itself. It's just homogeneous oneness. Homogeneous. utterly and entirely. In that homogeneity of that oneness, there is no way to recognize and distinguish anything. Zero. Even the concept of zero doesn't exist. It's simply nothing. Well, sorry, even the concept of no thing doesn't exist because it's homogeneity. In a block of gold or in a brick of gold in a vault, as they are in the banks, every particle is gold. Every particle is as gold as any other. No part of that brick of gold is more precious than any other. So in that metaphor should convey, if you will, the monolithic nature of consciousness. As in the Vashishta Yoga, for example, the examples are given, the block of granite. It doesn't matter what you carve out of it, whatever intricate forms, it remains to be a block of granite. Of course, consciousness is not granite. We know it's alive, it's vibrant, it's pulsating, it's filled with that, what otherwise makes all this tick. So therefore, the umbrella of the teaching here, consciously being chosen as that what Kashmir Shaivism or Trika Shaivism operates with, indispensable trinity of knower, knowing, and known. If some of you have been following us on some of the platforms, let alone YouTube, you probably have caught the drift by now, because we've been hinting at it quite heavily for the past 2 years. We've been speaking about it 20 years ago, and 10 years ago, of course, from the moment we showed up and showed our face out to the world. But for the past 2 years, it became almost necessary to orient any sincere finder, let alone seeker, in terms of what is going on behind the scenes, because many people have been treading the path of non-duality or Advaita or any other spiritual tradition which pertains to adopt that understanding of oneness. And yet, how does that oneness sit with the multiplicity of these experiences? And unless we, of course, dismiss this world, as in some traditions, it is legitimately done, consciously, legitimately, audaciously done. Dismiss this. It doesn't exist. It has no reality whatsoever. Neither reality of its own, no reality per se. Then that's fine. Can we do that? Fine between few can do that. Far few between. But if for most of us, common folk, it's a high order to jump, let's not pretend. We would like to settle on some set of understandings and ideas, and it sounds very, very liberating to hear that all there is one light. All there is the self. And that self cannot be further away, no closer to you than you already are. Period. End of the darshan. Okay? Start serving the tea and let's put some music on. I mean, come on. We can just sit for 3 hours and I will do that like when you bought that disc, right? That, well, only few people maybe remember those days when you buy that LP and you come back home, and it's like you starved for it. It's like I was back from the military, right? And you open it out, it's like pristine. And you take that on your finger. So you don't want to put the greasy marks, Then you place it on your player and you start playing it over and over. Because it sounds so good, so damn good. So, of course, we can speak to that, and I've seen people get so enamored, so really, really in love with the discourse itself, that they hear this over and over and over, at times for decades. And it begins to sit as an idea they themselves, if push come to shove, can teach and run satsangs and hold retreats. They just don't have that propensity. Majority of people don't. To kind of show up on a spot and hold space and kind of, it requires, one has to be really, really be called to show up, be totally out of it, in other words, nutty. Or one just simply, well, it's better to do this than some other jobs, why not that? See? I don't know if you can come up with other options, we can add them in, but I can see the three main veins here. No one else wants to do this, trust me. Although, by large, if you have heard these kind of discourses and read enough books, what stops you from start delivering your own? When Facebook came into existence, circa 2006, I recall, like suddenly, within the first year of Facebook, everyone was spiritual teacher, because that just simply felt like, okay, now I can, unanimously, or with my picture, or with the picture of Brad Pitt, or, I don't know, whoever that was, maybe deliver the teaching. So this is why I'm saying this. Nothing can be said about it. What can be said about that, what already you are? Or in this case, it would be more proper to say, what already I am. I am. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be subtracted from it. It's self-sufficient, it's complete in itself, it is expression of fullness itself. And yet, retreats are sold, books are sold, programs are being developed, this and that. Yes, of course, we see the kind of wave of that non-duality subsiding now, and what came forth much more unapologetically in the last 10 years is self-development, manifestation, and a continuation of the work on trauma. So somehow, after the euphoria of all this, nothing can be spoken about, therefore, sooner or later it dawns on one that no matter how many gatherings one attends, no matter how many times one hears this again, one's understanding will not become more acute than, let's say, 56 or 97 aha moments. Like you can add another aha, would that fly? And I often give this an example, how emphatic and how deep it has to hit you that from the moment you heard something, and by the time you have left that place where you heard it, and you gone back home, and you took a shower, and you had a drink, and you slept, and you woke up, and you went about your business, and you did this or that, how long did that stay with you? The acuity of that I'm talking about. Anything can hit you in a moment. Anything can hit us in a moment. And we feel like, oh, how long would that stay with you? That's the question. 24 hours? 48? 72 days? 3 days? So this is in a nutshell why we do this work. Because nothing can be said here that you do not know. And this makes it so much easier. So we don't beat about the bush. We don't waste our time. We do tantric work. And the tantric work it's like, for example, in the discourse, spiritual discourse, someone tells you, you're sitting here and kind of like poorly looking at me that something is lacking in your life. And I came here to somehow, by hook or by crook, to restore that sense of lack so that completeness and fullness prevails. And as that very old, very ancient, very tried and tested thing goes, whoever that is tells you, put your hand in your pocket. Okay? Maybe it's a pocket close to the heart. Not here, but here. Put your hand on the heart. Now move it. Unflip your pocket. Put your hand there. Do you feel it? Oh, are you? And you take it like a walnut size, I don't know, ruby, right? Like, I don't know, a GDP of several countries. I don't. The Queen of England, or the King of England, sorry, doesn't have it in his crown big enough, the Burmese pigeon blood ruby. Size of the walnut, This is what you're carrying. You're like infinitely wealthy. You're sitting here like a pasha. So, okay, so you go home and it's like, oh my God, I always had that. You always had that. And then, of course, you need to be reminded of that. So maybe you moved it from here somewhere safer, somewhere the zipper, you got a new garment, you have to be really guarded. But you put your hand, okay, you feel it, good. You went to your business, good, traveling, this, that, relationships, Oh, yeah, it's still there. Yeah. Oh, it's still there. See? Work has to bear fruit to such degree, spiritual that is work, that you can put your hand and be reassured that that walnut-sized ruby is always there, always, irrespective of how things go in your life, irrespective. And ruby, of course, here is a metaphor that represents, let's say, on top of that, it's the holy cow, it's the heavenly cow, it represents immortality as well. So it's not just enormously, immeasurably, infinitely precious. It also represents something, let's say, when you hold that ruby, you become instantly beyond time and space. You no longer know your age. You're no longer confined by circumstances. That's what we're talking about. So come on, let's amp up the game a little bit. Let's amp up this metaphor. So it's not just you're super wealthy, but the super wealthy are all hunting for that walnut-size ruby as well. Like Elon Musk and Bezos cannot sleep because they know that ruby like that exists, and no matter how many billions you have, you're still gonna die, and you can't take. But with the ruby, you don't die. You see? So this metaphor here, very ancient metaphor of that wealth that we all embody but go around begging in life, that is kind of like, let's say, if you're reading that Indian stories before you go to sleep, that's what it represents here. The work has to bear fruit to such degree that just like, okay, it's here. Let me hold it. Just quickly, nobody sees it. Yeah, and back there, back into the pocket, And then you can forget, and then you need to remember that. At any time, so it's not a mental reminder, it's an actual, tactile, somatic, direct experience of the essence of who you are. This is what Tantra is all about. So that what is self-evident is not only somehow understood or even intuited, had plenty of flashes, has plenty of revelations, but actually is there to reconnect at any moment in time. at any point in time. Whether the sun is rising, birds are chirping, spring outside, everything, job is fantastic, kids are good at school, or best even left home and freedom finally to do what you want to do, and nobody really breathes down your neck and asks you, Daddy, like your wife is not complaining, and everything is spick and span, and you can just enjoy your life. Or you're standing and there's like a world is ending. World is ending, there's this drop, this like you could see this, like everything is melting, the scene of the apocalypse and Armageddon or whatever you want to call it, really things are not looking good. You connect to that essence instantly, and that essence neither increases your happiness when you feel joyous already, because there's no need. You're already happy for no reason. No, it takes away anything from you because the world is ending or because there's some kind of reshuffling and nobody knows what's going to happen. So this is what I'm saying at the get-going. So if someone thinks that it's about hearing something that the spiritual preceptor, teacher, the adept, whoever that is, might say that will do that final thing, that everything is like a jigsaw puzzle. Everything was falling into place quite neatly over the years. I've done my work. I just need that final piece, and then fullness of the picture is there. That's not what this work is about. If this is what you're after, please pursue your work. Look for that teacher. Look for that book. Look for that message. If you are here to address something what might have happened or indeed happened, if you are here truly licking your wounds, you might stick around, because as a therapeutic part of this work, as a byproduct, this work also has that quality where we can lick goodbye, right? Let's maybe play with a metaphor. Not kiss goodbye, lick goodbye these aches and pains that somehow become part of our life, and in fact indispensable part of our life to such degree we can't even imagine living without that accumulated trauma. And if you are here to hold that damn walnut-sized thing in your hand at all times, then you might be in the right place, because that's what this work is about. This work is unapologetically about simply rediscovering that what is precious beyond any measure, beyond any conceivable measure or inconceivable measure of what is actually going on in terms of this affair of being alive, as opposed to what we made believe or somehow got enchanted into believing. So this is the opening, let's say, welcoming words to position, define ourselves. In terms of the way of how it can be spoken, we can have endless angles at how to define unity or oneness, but all of them will be approximate, if you see what I'm trying to say, if you really ponder on why that is. Because anything said and anything pondered on, anything that it tries to articulate itself, already subject to this vibrating frequency of Noah, knowing and known. See? This is the paradoxical way, quicksilver, of how awareness conceals itself in the experience as this world, and then it is down to awareness and nothing else to rediscover itself through that, what this modality here set to conceal in the first place. You see? So therefore, anything that can be said, anything that can be understood in itself is concealment. Whereas direct abiding in that what arises on its own requires no understanding, because in that it transcends the very, very relationship which served here to conceal that oneness. The knower, knowing and known are transcended and annihilate each other. What remains is knowing itself, because knower or subject and object simply absolve each other. When subject and object absolves each other, there's no dichotomized processes whatsoever. Mind cannot enter there. Mind is too thick a category to even intuit that. Intuition belongs to another category altogether. Intuition belongs to intellect, which is mind before its suffusion with a sense of self, as that self of ahamkara, as that self which is an expression of universal self, of course, but it's what gives rise to individuality. This is, in a way, rephrasing, yet in another way, of why understanding non-duality is an oxymoron in itself. Understanding unity in itself is, if you will, a daunting affair. And yet, everything is structured around that, seer, seeing, and seen. Everything is structured around that. Because that's the way awareness expresses itself. And in expressing itself, it has the potential to know itself, even if the price is concealment. Okay? So we're laying out this as theses. We're just now laying out our cards on the table with which we will play this weekend. So, this is what this work is in a nutshell, in a sense of, let's say, paradoxes that it acknowledges and plays with. And, of course, that power, the mover and shaker, that is here at all times, always, is what brings about that possibility in the first place and becomes an actuality. So that power, of course, is where the work itself and from where the work itself unfolds. Because that power of concealment and power of self-revelation is that very same power. The power of concealment and the power of self-revelation, there are not different powers. They are just different shaktis, different modalities of the same power. So the work, of course, is indispensable in working with that power, invoking that power, courting that power, harnessing that power, and ultimately surrendering to that power so that power can complete this work, as it were, on our behalf, because it's not a personal affair. Never was and never will be. At least that's the standpoint of understanding here.